age-old debate, rent or buy. Okay. Who here thinks renting is better? Put up their hand. Okay. Good, good, good. Okay. And why is it good to rent versus buy?
You got flexibility.
Yes.
Low risk.
Yes.
So if you don't like the neighborhood or don't like your neighbor, you can
Good.
move. You can always upgrade or downgrade.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Great. Great. Awesome. Okay. So renting. So when I was talking to that real estate investor, the veteran guy, he rents. And I was like, why? Why do you rent? And he was like saying the similar stuff, flexibility. And he was talking about you can save on the down payment. And he uses that down payment to invest in other properties. And then he says he doesn't have to pay strata fees. He doesn't pay property taxes. He doesn't pay for repairs. He just calls his, calls his landlord and goes, oh, the sink's broken. Oh, the toilet's broken. Can you fix it? It's not tied down to one location, like you said. And here's a great reason. You can often, he told me, like he's renting in Yaletown, and it's like 1,000 square feet, and he's paying like 2-bedroom, whatever, with view, and he's paying like $2,000 a month. And then I was like, okay. So what I realized is that often landlords charge below market value rent. How many of you know that? How many of you have seen that? And often landlords, how many of you heard the saying like, oh, well, my tenant's been so nice to me, I'm not going to raise the rent. And they haven't raised the rent for like years. How many of you heard those kind of stories, right? Okay. So when I talk to real estate investors, they always raise the rent, like yearly. They always. And then I was like, okay, so why do typical landlords not raise the rent? And then I go through a little bit of that in my book, because if you're treating your rental investment property as a business, then you got to be in the business. You should charge market value rent. You should offer great service and customer support. But landlords, it seems like they want to just get a tenant and never talk to them ever again. It's like, here, sign here, and then bye. I'm going to move to like China or Japan or whatever, and then never talk to you again. Just keep depositing the check, right? And it's like, like what kind of business survives where like the owner never talks to the customer? Anyways, so the point is you can often rent at below market value, and your landlord might not raise the rent for years. So that's a pro for renting. Cons for renting, obviously, you don't own the property. You need the landlord's permission for renovations. You can get kicked out just like that, meaning if they want to sell or other reasons, right? Like in BC, unless the landlord is like selling the property or trying to move in themselves, it's probably almost impossible to kick out tenants. Like unless you're really, really bad tenant, you can get kicked out, but you can stretch out that kicking out period, the eviction period. For some reason, the Residential Tenancy Act and they're really favoring tenants, and anyways, I won't get into that.
How long can you stretch the eviction period?
Let me say, I'll tell you this. So my client, we had this tenant problem. We had to try to kick him out, and we went by the books. We followed the rules, and they were supposed to be kicked out according to the rules. But then he brought his lawyer in, and I feel sorry for me, and then my tenant has to move out in the winter time, and extended a couple months. So it's like, it's very flexible. And then I talked to our office. My brokerage had a guy from the PZ Residential Tenancy Branch come in and talk to us. And he was telling us about tenancy rules. And basically he said it's all up in the air. There's no firm structure. It's like, here's kind of the guidelines. And it can be bent. And yeah, so it's not very set in stone. So to answer your question, flexible. Okay, so who thinks it's better to buy? Okay, great. Can you explain why?
So when when I buy, I own the property,
Yeah.
and I feel secure. It's my property, it's my investment, and I pay it off eventually, and I can do whatever I like, and nobody is going to kick me out, and in the long term, real estate is going to go up. So, and it's great. So
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks, Joanne. So yeah, the typical reasons for buying: you get to own something, nobody will kick you out. When you sell it in the future and you made a profit, you don't have to pay capital gains tax. The cons: you have to pay all the maintenance, all the strata fees, mowing the lawn, repairs. You're tied to a mortgage. And how many of you know? How many of you have read Rich Dad Poor Dad? Put up their hand. Good, a lot of you. Okay, so you guys know that buying a home for yourself is not an asset, right? It's a liability, right? How many of you, so an asset is something that gives you money, and a liability is something that takes money from your pocket. So when you buy a home to live in for yourself, it's a liability, okay? And when you buy a rental property, it's an asset. So that's one of the concepts I was, if you haven't read that book, I would highly recommend it. Read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It talks about assets and liabilities and that kind of stuff. And the other thing with the cons of buying a home, you have to come up with a large down payment. Yes?
But I mean, if you just say 5 years ago, I mean, if the market's slowly creeping up, I mean, how could it be a liability if you're owning your own home? I mean, you eventually 5 years later you sell for more than what you pay for. Yeah. I mean, I have to argue with this.
Yeah. Great.
I mean, if it were at the top of the bubble, yes, you can it may crash.
Yep. So when you own it, it's a liability. But when you sell it, that's when it's an asset.
Right.
Yeah. So that's how it works in that sense.